Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on redundancy and your pension as part of Pensions Awareness Week. My name is Barry Prost. I'll be your host for this segment. I'm managing partner with Yala.ie. We provide embedded recruitment solutions to SMEs and large corporates on a monthly subscription basis, and also a branding platform where we provide video content to help candidates engage with your vacancies in a more impactful way. So I'm delighted to be joined by Rafe Benson, co-founder of MoneyCube.ie, the online pensions and investments advisor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be with you.
And delighted to have Rafe with us, who's an expert in this area. And from an employment perspective, which is the sector that I work in, I think it's critical that more candidates are looking for pensions as part of their salary package. So I'm delighted to kind of support this week, and really looking forward to our discussion for the next few minutes. So in terms of the employment market, what we're seeing is really reduced demand for pensions as part of employee salary packages. In terms of taking a snapshot of jobs advertised today, we found that only 13% of jobs had pensions advertised as part of their package, which I'm sure Rafe will probably be pretty shocked at. Something maybe we can touch on a bit later on. And then in the context of redundancy, which is what we're talking about today, redundancies are up by 4 or 5 times in 2021 compared to 2020. So, certainly it's an issue that a lot of people are facing, and hopefully we can provide some advice to those people today in and around what to do with their pension. And this session certainly aims to give you a guide to what redundancy means for you and your pension. So, Rafe, I'll pass over to you just with the first question around, what are the implications of redundancy on your pension? And I guess the immediate one is that your pension stops.
Yeah, that's right, Barry. So I guess there are probably 3 things that to really think about in terms of your pension in a redundancy situation, which we'll cover just now. The first one's pretty simple to get your head around, I guess. Redundancy means you're stopping working, and with that the pension contributions that you and potentially your employer have been making also stop. And that brings you on to a question as to what you do with that pension, which we can talk about. But I suppose at an immediate level, the thing to be aware of is like your income itself, your pension pot is coming to a close there, and different people are going to have different situations in terms of how they handle that. If you've been in post for quite a short time, under 2 years, you may be in a situation where you can actually get a refund of some of that money, albeit the tax treatment will be less attractive, and potentially your employer can also be clawing back the contributions they've made during those 2 years. So if for people in a situation where they're leaving employment but with quite a short service, that becomes an option. But for the vast majority of people probably in post for over 2 years, you're looking at a pot of money that you've now got a question as to what you do with it, and how to negotiate that.
Perfect. Okay. So you'll also get compensation during redundancy. So how does that impact pension?
Yeah, so that's probably the kind of most complicated aspect of a redundancy situation. Like typically you'll be given a package of some kind, and that package might be the bare minimum, the legal minimum, or can be more generous, right? And depending on how generous that gets, you can have different questions to grapple with in terms of the tax treatment and how you maximize your financial position, but essentially, that's that's not a pure pension question. That's one around what your negotiating position looks like. I guess what, the reasons for redundancy and what financial position your employer is in, it makes a great deal of difference to that sort of termination payment. Typically, redundancy is, I guess, the tax system tries to help people in a redundancy situation. So a certain amount of that payment would typically be tax-free, but there's also a more complicated interaction between tax-free lump sums in redundancy and the tax-free lump sum that typically will come as part of your pension. So that's the big kind of question where I'd really encourage people to think through with care, get advice as required, which might be coming via your employer. But the big, I suppose, thing to take away is there's money to be won and lost by getting that decision right. So maybe just talk a little bit about the nuances there. It's probably the most intricate bit of pensions and a redundancy situation. I guess, effectively the way it works is that normally the value of your back up. So like typically all of us get a lump sum from our pension at retirement, and a portion of that can be tax-free. Now, typically in a redundancy situation where you are being paid a tax-free lump sum, there'll be an adjustment to that tax-free lump sum for the value of your pension, of the value of your lump sum from your pension. And the decision point you have is, do I waive a future right to a tax-free lump sum from my pension in order to get a higher tax-free lump sum now at redundancy? And there's a pure maths question there, right? So which is going to bring me more money over the long run? And that's kind of case by case. You just got to run the numbers, understand them, and be confident that the assumptions you're making behind those numbers are valid. But it's it's a human situation. Like redundancy is not an easy time, and very different if you've got your next job lined up and visibility on the pension that you've negotiated hard on that for your new post, compared to an unknown future where actually every penny might count, and having cash in the bank now might well be worth sacrificing some future value in terms of your pension lump sum. So very much a case by case one with a kind of maths answer as well as a realities on the ground answer.
Sure. Okay. No, that's great. And in terms of your old pension, how do you address that issue, and what should people do with an old pension?
Yeah, good question. So I suppose that's the other aspect of this. If you've left a position, you will have a pot of money from the pension there that you can no longer pay into, and you'll probably be receiving a letter in the post asking you what you want to do with that money. Most of us probably have three broad options in that situation. The first, which is an option worth considering in any situation in life, I suppose, is doing nothing. So what that means is leaving the money in the pension scheme of your old employer. It remains invested and ticking over nicely. And albeit you've left that job, it may be that your old job had a very attractive pension scheme. Low costs, good investment choices, good service, that kind of thing. So there are arguments for doing that. Alternatively, if you're moving to a new job, you could look at moving that pension across to that job and simply getting the funds invested in your new pension, which has the advantage that everything's in a single place, and you've probably got someone in HR who's going to answer the phone and help you out with it, and it's kind of in hand, if you like. Certainly when people have left a job, we often find that they struggle to get good information on their pension. You're kind of old news to the old employer, and obviously not in the office, and there's no banging on someone's door to figure out who you should contact and so on. So it's one of those things that at MoneyCube we're big into helping people feel close to their pension and realize that it's an asset that they own, and that becomes more difficult in a job you've left. So yeah, so those are kind of options 1 and 2, or leave it where it is, or move it to a new job. Now, equally, you may not have a new job lined up, or you may prefer to keep them separate in order to have more control over them, access your pensions at different times, and so on. So that is option 3, which is carving your pension out of your old employer's pension scheme and moving it into a pot that really just has your name on it only, which you control. You can probably get advice from someone like ourselves on it, and ongoing kind of control over the investment, better visibility on cost, good responsive service, all that kind of thing. So that's the kind of middle route in terms of. We've often found when people have left a job in a redundancy situation, there's a desire to cut the cord completely with that employer and just draw a line under that employment experience. So a lot of people I find do want to move their pension out from their old employer, and it's just figuring out, if you feel like that, or if that's the decision, then is it more worthwhile to move it to a new employer, or should you put it in a pot that's got your name on it alone?
Sure. Okay. Well, look, that's really interesting. Rafe, thanks for that. I mean, I think, there seems to be a few key questions there. First of all, whether you should take the money now or later. And then a question of whether you leave the pension where it is, or potentially take it to a new job. But either way, look, it is a complicated area, and it seems to be the best advice is to get to take advice from a kind of a trusted professional, in this area. But certainly, from my perspective, in the within the employment sector and the recruitment sector, given that there's full tax relief from pension contributions, ranging from 15% to 40%, depending on the person's age profile, it really is a highly efficient way of investing your money.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. But I think, am I right then? You're seeing, in the market you operate on, there's a lot of people. You're seeing there is a greater preponderance of redundancies coming through in 21 then versus last year. I guess a hangover from all the changes in the workplace arising out of lockdowns and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. That's driving it. Now, what we are seeing, thankfully, is a rebound in these numbers, and the job numbers coming out are very positive. But yeah, no, certainly. I mean, 21 compared to 20, we're seeing kind of redundancies up 4 or 5 times. So
yeah,
and
I think what I've found, people in that position often feel like is, if I'm in a big corporate, say, there's been plenty of infrastructure around me, whether that's asking the guy across the desk what his experience is, or who we should, going downstairs to ask the HR person or whatnot. And in a redundancy situation, the strange thing is that all goes away very quickly, and it can be adversarial as well. So it may be a conversation between lawyers rather than between you and your boss or whatever. So the whole kind of tenor of the conversation has changed, and what's more, the kind of way of running the corporate pension scheme, which was kind of all done through payroll and sort of business as usual processes, and the machine just keeps going, doesn't really work, because this is a highly personalized situation. It's unique to you, and so you might want either independent support, or at least somebody getting to grips with your situation in a way that's not just part of the overall corporate administration of your pension. It's actually specific advice tailored to you. So that's been my experiences. That's why people come to people like ourselves, to kind of understand that and get the best outcome in terms of taking decisions around the lump sum they take in redundancy, but also what they do with that pension from their old job as they move on. So those are the kind of two big things I'd point to be having a chew on if you're in a redundancy situation. Brilliant.
Well, listen, look, we'll leave it there. There's plenty there to consider. Thanks so much, Rafe, for your time and sharing your thoughts with us. And thanks to you for joining today. If you would like more information, please log on to pensionsawarenessweek.ie.
Thanks a lot.